Today's Daily Dose of Math is a statistics situation where two classes of students have had students volunteer to try out a new workbook to see if the workbook is going to be useful. And what the students did was they recorded how many hours they spent working on the workbook, and we also have the grades for each student in the math course that they're studying. Each class had 10 students participate in this experiment. Now this data may look familiar, so you may think you watched this video before, but maybe you haven't, because I am using the same set of data for Doug's class and Eli's class for 3 different videos in which we answer 3 different questions about statistics that can be done with this data. This time the question is, how dispersed are the grades in the 2 classes, and which is more dispersed? Now the key is in the question. This sort of data can be used, and is shown being used in the other videos, to find the correlation coefficient, and that is a useful thing to have to answer some questions. Or to find the equation of the linear line of regression, and that is a useful thing to have to answer different types of questions. But when you're talking about dispersal, the correlation coefficient and the equation of the line of regression are not necessary to answer the question. What the student who's answering this question is doing in this case is starting by making a scatter plot for each, which is to analyze the situation. That allows us to see the data in 2 different ways. We can look at the data in the table of values and try to draw some conclusions from it, but we can also look at the data on the graph and draw the conclusions. I encourage my students to always do a scatter plot when they're given this type of data, because analyzing the situation is a necessary thing to do in order to find your way to the right answer. But the student should realize that when looking for dispersal, mean and mean deviation are useful. Mean deviation is a measure of dispersal. So this calculation has been done for both sets of data, the grades in Doug's class and the grades in Eli's class. We have calculated the mean for each, and we have 69.4, 69.8. But then we use that mean and the grades in order to calculate the mean deviation. I'm not showing the steps of doing that formula because I have a different video that shows it. The mean deviation for Doug's class is 8. The mean deviation for Eli's class is 10.6. Therefore, we've answered how dispersed they both are by giving the mean deviation, and which is more dispersed? Eli's class is more dispersed. Notice how I didn't find the mean and mean deviation for the number of hours, simply because the question is not asking about that, but it could have been done. So what this is about is answering the type of question that is a task. A larger question where you're given a lot of information and the question is not telling you which technique to use. The student who knows what they're doing is able to look at the question, what's being asked and how it's being asked, and realize whether they should be using the correlation coefficient or the equation, or in this case, mean deviation, which is the best way of answering the question. That is today's Daily Dose of Math. Please like, subscribe, and share.